Dedan Kimathi Wachuri's life begins not with universal admiration but with deep controversy. Controversy shaped by war, ideology, and the competing narratives of colonial power and African resistance. To the British colonial government, Kimathi was a dangerous insurgent, branded a terrorist, and portrayed as a violent, unstable criminal whose execution was necessary to restore order. Yet, to many Kenyans, he stood as a fearless freedom fighter, a symbol of resistance who sacrificed everything for land and independence. This stark contradiction would define not only his life but also his legacy. Even within the Mau Mau movement he led, Kimathi was a divisive figure. Known for his strict and sometimes ruthless discipline, he enforced loyalty with harsh punishments, including beatings and threats of execution, even against his own brother. His leadership style created tension among fighters, particularly as he emphasized written records, propaganda, and structured organization in the forests. While his literacy set him apart and helped him craft a political vision for the struggle, some of his fellow fighters distrusted these methods, seeing them as overly influenced by colonial systems. Internal rivalries further isolated him in the later stages of the uprising, with claims that defectors from within the movement aided the British in tracking him down. His 1956 trial added another layer of controversy. Historians widely regard it as a miscarriage of justice. Despite being a central figure in a large-scale anti-colonial war, Kimathi was sentenced to death not for rebellion but for the possession of a firearm, a charge many believe was used strategically to ensure a swift execution and suppress his symbolic power. The colonial government moved quickly, determined to prevent him from becoming a rallying figure for prolonged resistance. Ironically, after Kenya gained independence, Kimathi's legacy did not immediately receive the recognition one might expect. For decades, the first post-independence governments under Jomo Kenyatta and Daniel Arap Moi distanced themselves from the Mau Mau, viewing the movement as potentially divisive. Kimathi, once the face of armed resistance, was largely sidelined from official narratives of nationhood. It was only in 2003, under President Mwai Kibaki, that the Mau Mau were formally recognized and Kimathi was restored to his place as a national hero. Behind these controversies lies his origins. Dedan Kimathi was born on October 31, 1920, in Thenge village in Nyeri district into a Kikuyu family of the Ambui clan. His mother, Waibuthi, was one of his father's Wachuri's 3 wives. However, his paternity remains a subject of historical debate, as his father is said to have died shortly before his birth, and local customs may have led to another man assuming that role. He grew up among several siblings and half-siblings in a traditional rural setting. Kimathi's early life was marked by both promise and defiance. He began school relatively late, at around 15 years old, attending Karunaini Primary School before moving on to the Church of Scotland Mission School at Tumutumu. He quickly distinguished himself as an intelligent student, particularly skilled in English, writing, and poetry. He was also active in debate, showing early signs of leadership and persuasion. Yet, his rebellious streak often brought him into conflict with authority. Financial difficulties forced him to work to pay school fees, and his indiscipline eventually led to his expulsion in 1944, cutting short his formal education. Despite this, his literacy opened doors. In the years that followed, Kimathi took on various jobs, working as a swineherd, a forestry laborer collecting seeds, and later as a clerk for firms including the South Tetu Dairy and Shell Oil Company. He briefly enlisted in the King's African Rifles during World War II, but was discharged, with accounts citing misconduct or dissatisfaction with conditions. He also worked as an untrained primary school teacher, though his teaching career was short-lived due to disciplinary issues. By the late 1940s, Kimathi's path had shifted toward political activism. He became involved with the Kenya African Union, KAU, eventually serving as a local secretary. His growing political consciousness and frustration with colonial injustices, especially land alienation, pushed him deeper into resistance. When the Mau Mau uprising began in 1952, Kimathi emerged as one of his most prominent leaders, rising to the rank of Field Marshal and Commander-in-Chief of the Kenya Land and Freedom Army. Operating from the forests of Mount Kenya and the Aberdares, he led a guerrilla campaign against British forces and their allies. Despite harsh conditions, he maintained a structured resistance movement, complete with ranks, communication systems, and political messaging. His wife, Mukami Kimathi, became a crucial ally, coordinating supplies and intelligence while evading capture. Their partnership reflected a shared commitment to the cause, even as it brought immense personal risk. Kimathi's struggle came to an end in October 1956 when he was captured after being shot in the thigh by a colonial loyalist. Severely injured, he was tried and sentenced to death. On February 18, 1957, he was executed by hanging at Kimathi Maximum Security Prison.
In his final hours, he met secretly with his wife and reportedly declared that his blood would water the tree of independence. He was buried in an unmarked grave within the prison grounds, his burial site deliberately concealed by colonial authorities to prevent it from becoming a symbol of resistance. For decades, his family lived in poverty, and his remains were not officially located until many years later. Kimathi died without wealth or property, having devoted his life entirely to the struggle for Itaka na Wiathi, land and freedom. Yet his legacy endures far beyond material measures. Today, he is remembered as one of Kenya's most complex and influential figures, a man shaped by conflict, driven by conviction, and ultimately immortalized in the story of a nation's fight for independence.